I don't begrudge anarcho-capitalists using the term anarcho-capitalist. I regard it broadly the same way that I regard National Socialists using the term socialist. Ultimately, if you accept that the other word changes the meaning of the overall ideology, then that's fine. But just as it would be ridiculous for National Socialists to call themselves socialists, it's ridiculous for anarcho-capitalists to call themselves anarchists. They're much better off, I think, using the term libertarian, because while that was originally used to describe anarchism, it has since admittedly turned into a right-wing capitalist, libertarian, liberal position. So, you know, I think anarcho-capitalist or libertarian, but not anarchist. And there's another thing I want to talk about, which is there are three terms that anarcho-capitalists use, and you need to stop using them right now. Number one, individualist anarchist. Nope, they're not individualist anarchists. If you want a really good example of this, one of my favourite anarchist theorists ever, who was also possibly like the original anarchist theorist in a way, William Godwin, was also the founder of individualist anarchism, and he has a section of his book called Of Property. The book is an inquiry concerning political justice of property, and he talks about how basically workers should own what they produce, and it is immoral for someone to own something that the workers use to own what they produce. So he's a socialist, 100%. The second term he uses, market anarchist. This is also false, and one of the things I'll often do is if someone says, oh, I'm a market anarchist because I believe that people should be able to trade what they own and you shouldn't take away from people what they own, I'll be like, oh, so kind of like a neo-confederate. You know, if you're going to argue that people should be able to trade what you own and it's immoral to take away from people what they own, then the historical record of what has previously been allowed to be owned by people would suggest that you should, you know, revert right the way back to slavery and indentured servitude and perhaps a lot of patriarchal ideas. So what you're really saying is, I believe that the property I consider to be justly owned should be traded freely in a market, and that's ultimately what the vast majority of socialists also believe, particularly market socialists and market anarchists. And again, market anarchists also, I mean, they don't have quite as much of a term, or as much as a monopoly on the use of this term, because it wasn't sort of established quite as its own movement in the way that individualist anarchism was. But a really good example of kind of a foundational text on market socialism, even though it wasn't actually developed, or market anarchism, even though it was developed quite late, it drew off a lot of previous ideas, and it would be Markets Not Capitalism, which is a really good book. And obviously Markets Not Capitalism suggests it is not anarcho-capitalist, it is market anarchist. So again, anarcho-capitalist using the term market anarchist is ridiculous. I just want to talk a bit about what the overall point of this is. Anarcho-capitalists seem to love taking terms from people, and also I guess even appropriating ideas. Like one of the things I see them do a lot on their subreddit is link to anything critical of the government or of anything basically, and acting as if it at all relates to their ideology of anarcho-capitalism. Recently, I think it was just today, I was on their subreddit, and there was a post on the videos subreddit, which I don't go on because it's and it was about South Park, and all it was an episode of South Park talking about the importance of free speech and the trouble of terrorism taking away people's rights to free speech, which, you know, I've already talked about there. But, you know, basically it was the majority of Reddit saying obviously free speech is important, terrorism is bad. And for some reason, an anarcho-capitalist linked to this on the anarcho-capitalist subreddit with the title "Reddit gets it," or "Our videos gets it," and you think, well, yeah, but do you seriously think people talking about the importance of free speech is worth putting on a on your subreddit for anarcho-capitalism? They seem to like appropriating things, and the final thing I wanted to talk about, and this one is really weird, but I've heard it, anarcho-pacifism being used in line with anarcho-capitalism, and also the other idea that anyone who's an anarcho-socialist, or anyone who's an anarchist, a left-wing anarchist, must be an insurrectionist anarchist. And both of these claims are completely false. You can be a anarchist and be completely pacifist because you consider the first of all, obviously, an anarchist considers the claim of the boss that he owns the produce of the worker to be an unjust claim. Now, an anarcho-pacifist would be someone who disagrees that the workers ought to use violent means to overcome the oppression of the boss over them, and also the oppression of the state, but I'm using specifically socialist context to explain this. It does not mean what anarcho-capitalist apparently thinks it means, which is that the workers should just endure the oppression of capitalism without paying any heed to it. So where on earth the anarcho-capitalists I've spoken to have got it into their idea and into their heads that anarcho-pacifism is a suitable word to be used as if it were synonymous with anarcho-capitalism. I'm really not sure, but it's so deceptive, and it lacks so much academic integrity. The amount of times you see this movement that you would think wants to be taken seriously in political science, but they shit on political science all the time, and they just ignore everything other than their own sphere of just standing in a circle and creating an echo chamber. That's all they do, and frankly, it has to stop.